So my name's Abby. I work at the Kids Coding team here at Google, and I'm going to talk a little bit about keyboard navigation. So first off, I'm going to give you a little background about why we chose to start with keyboard navigation. I'm going to give you a quick demo of what we currently have. And then the rest of the talk, I'm going to talk about different ways that people can change and configure keyboard navigation. So one of those ways is being able to change the key mappings. So what key maps what to what action. So opening the toolbox currently maps to T, just because I chose that. There's really no good reason. And then workspace navigation is how a user navigates the different inputs, fields, connections, and blocks on a workspace. And then I'm going to show different ways that people can change this for maybe different audiences. And then finally, I'm going to talk about some future work for keyboard navigation. So why keyboard navigation? So keyboard navigation is kind of our first step in creating an accessible Blockly experience. Making Blockly completely accessible is a very large and very daunting task. So we wanted to pick something that was kind of smaller and something we could more easily bite off. Second off, it's useful for sighted users. For power users who want to use the keyboard, it's definitely useful, and it's potentially useful for people with motor impairments. So our goal for keyboard navigation was to create an easy way for developers and researchers to test keyboard navigation. It wasn't to create a perfect keyboard navigation setup. We're really aware of the fact that this is a large problem and we don't really have the perfect answer for it. So we really wanted to empower other users and other researchers to test this problem along with us. So with all of that said, I'm going to do a quick demo of what we currently have. So in order to get into keyboard navigation mode, I'm going to shift click on the screen. You can also get there by hitting Control K. So this will put a cursor on the screen. It's the blinking red line. Next, I'm going to hit T, and that's going to open the toolbox and the flyout. So now I'm on the toolbox. I'm going to use the WASD keys to move around the flyout and toolbox, and also be using the WASD keys to move around the different connections and stuff on the workspace. So I'm going to hit D. That's going to go to the if block, hit enter. Now I'm going to navigate to the next connection. I'll go into more information about how I'm navigating to the different connections and inputs later on. But right now, good to know that I'm going to the next connection point that I want to enter block to. So I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to mark the location. So you can see from the blue line that showed up, that location is marked. So that's kind of my insertion point. Sure. Better? Cool. So I'm going to hit I get to make noise. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna then enter another block on the screen. So I'm gonna hit this one and enter one more. Okay, cool. And then just for demo purposes, I'm going to add another block to the workspace. So I've added a few blocks on the screen. Now I'm going to navigate to the block I just added and input that into my stack. So in order to do this, I'm gonna navigate to the stack level. So I can now navigate to the next stack, and I'm going to find Actually, I'm going to back up a second. I'm going to mark my location that I want to insert the block to. So that's the blue line. And then I'm going to navigate to the block that I want to insert. So once I navigate here, I'm going to put I, and that's going to insert this block into the stack. So the last thing that we can do with keyboard navigation is we can disconnect blocks. So I'm going to hit the X key, and it's going to disconnect the blocks. So that was a very quick demo of what we currently have. The rest is just going to be me breaking down the demo and talking a little bit more about it. So first thing we're going to talk about is key mappings and actions. So we're going to talk about what key mappings and actions are, and then how we can modify them. So a Blockly action is meant to represent a user's intent. So if a user wants to go up on the screen, whether they're in the toolbox or they're on the workspace, that will map to the same key. And then actions hold their name and a description of what they do. So currently, the actions we have are previous, out, next, and in. These are mapped to the WASD keys. insert, which is when I connected the second block on the workspace into the stack. That's mapped to the I key. Enter, which creates that blue line we saw on the demo, is for mark. X is to disconnect. T is for the toolbox. Escape is closing the toolbox. And Control K is toggling the keyboard navigation on and off. I'll pause there. Any questions or anything? Yeah. Yeah, so this is on, it's going to be in our Q3 release. So that's coming up on Monday, but it's hosted on Rachel's site right now. So it'll be available to play with. Yeah. Great. Cool. So now to modify key mapping. So like I said, we wanted to make it really easy for people to change the key mappings. So set action for key. So there's two methods. One is set action for key, and the other is create serialized key. So the first thing we do is create the serialized key. It takes in the key code and a list of modifiers. We currently have an enum with modifiers. I think it's Control, Command, Shift, and Alt, I think, are the 4 key codes we currently have. And I was just told to look up instead of to the side. Okay, so, and then, so once we get that key code, then we can set the action for the key code. So there's a list of actions in the navigation file, and you can pass it the key code you created from create serialized key and the action you want. So the reason it's important to be able to modify the key mappings is that for accessibility, a lot of people have their own setup already. So it's really important that we don't interfere with that and we allow them to make this something that will work for what they already have set up. Okay, so now we're on to workspace navigation. So workspace navigation is how a user navigates the different fields, inputs, blocks, connections, and workspace coordinates. So these are all the different elements that a user might want to navigate. So I'm just going to show a few of those elements. So right now this is showing the previous connection. If I go in, we're showing the input. If I go out and down, this is the next connection. We also have the stack, and then this is showing the workspace. So there's lots of different elements on the workspace that a user needs to be able to navigate in order to use Blockly properly. Yeah. Like move you around? Yeah. Currently, it does not. It's going to. We just need to figure out the best way to do it. So I think one of the ways recommended was using Shift WASD to move around the keys. So it just needs to be implemented. Yeah. Okay, great. So in order to represent all of those different fields, inputs, connections, blocks, and stacks, we created an AST. So the AST holds all of these values and is a structured way for us to look at them. So this is an example of the AST. It's really not the prettiest picture, but I added colors, so hopefully that'll help. There's currently 4 levels. There's the workspace level. There's underneath that is the stack level, and this holds all of the stacks on a workspace. Under that, there's the block level, so that holds all of the blocks and then all of the previous and next connections on that block, and it holds all of the ones that are nested at the same level. So as you can see, A and B are both they're not nested, so they're at the same level. And then finally, the 4th one is inputs and fields. So anyone have questions on this gorgeous photo? No? Okay. Yeah. Yes, that is a great question and leading into what I'm going to say next. So perfect. Thank you. Okay, so real quick, the AST is created using AST nodes. They hold the location, so the field, connection, workspace coordinate, and they also hold the type. And then an AST node can go to the next, in, out, or previous location from where it currently is. Okay, cool. So the cursor sits on top of the AST and controls how the user navigates around the AST. So the AST is mainly a structured way for developers to look at all elements on the workspace, but the cursor is what the user is actually going to be able to navigate with. And we need this because the user doesn't necessarily want to go to every single spot on the workspace or on the different blocks. So the different cursors allow the developer to control where the user is going to go. So that's kind of why we need the two different layers. Yeah. Okay, so the cursor currently holds the current node that it's at. It has a way to set the current node, and it has next, in, previous, or out. These are something that a developer can override to create multiple different cursors that do different things. So I'm going to show maybe an example of that. Here is my gorgeous keyboard nav demo page with lots of text. But so we have a default cursor, and this default cursor navigates really similar to how the AST is created. So if I shift click, I can go to the next item, which goes down in the tree. If I go in, this will go to the next input. If I go in again, it'll go to an output. If I keep going in, at some point I keep trying to go in and I can't do anything. So I'm kind of stuck here. So this might be really good for someone who knows more about Blockly, but for someone who's just starting, this is really frustrating. Just hitting D and not having it do anything is really annoying. So we also created a basic cursor. So this does a pre-order traversal of the tree and allows us to go to the next or previous location in it. So I can get to everything I want in this stack of blocks by either using the D or the A key. So if I hit D, I will just keep, well, probably easier to show it down here. If I hit D, I will just get here and I will keep going. So the cursor is nice because it allows you to create different cursors for maybe different audiences. Okay. Cool. And then finally, future work. Wow, I think I went really quickly, but future work. We want to provide an easy way to change the cursor rendering. So the red line and blue mark that you guys saw on the screen is not necessarily easily changed. It can be changed right now, but we want to provide easier or APIs to make that easier. We want to support multiple workspaces, and then we need to be able to navigate all the non-block components on the workspace. So the trash can, the workspace comments, the icons on a block. And finally, we'd really like all of your feedback. So we currently haven't had a great chance to test this with users. So we'd really like you to tell us what is great, what is not great. And it can be found on our release candidate playground, which Rachel wrote on the board back there. So you're more than welcome to play around, and it has the demos for what we did as well. And Sam's modifying it. Okay. But yeah, so feel free to take a look at that later. Okay, any questions? Yes.
So after playing this for just a while yourself, what notes
I'm not sure exactly what factor. It does make me faster when I'm like just trying to add blocks and stuff to the workspace. I haven't tested with like really large workspaces and lots of blocks, so that would be actually really interesting to try.
but you kind of
Yeah, for me at least, for what the simple things I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
yeah. Those set up
Yes.
can be expanded, or are you sort of
Stuck with those.
yeah?
So the question was about actions and whether they can be expanded. We don't have a great API for adding new actions, but in the accessibility hackathon tomorrow, it does show you how you can add new actions and how you can like make it do exactly what you want. Yeah, great. Yes.
In terms of work, how interact with
That is actually my project for next quarter. uh, yes, I haven't thought about it a lot. I think it's a really good like opportunity. It'll be a lot faster to move around and search for different things. So yeah. Sam, yes. Yes, yeah. So the question was why we chose WASD for navigating around instead of the arrow keys. And it was because arrow keys are generally what people use for screen readers. So we wanted something that didn't collide with that. Which is, but yeah, it can get a little confusing sometimes. I've definitely tried to use or arrow keys and been like, why did I break everything? Why does nothing work? So yeah, yes.
Sorry, I don't have any kind of or very little background with coding.
Okay.
So I'm kind of wondering, can you give a little bit back kind of target?
Yes. This is a good question. So you're asking who kind of the target is for keyboard navigation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think eventually the target is gonna be people who have limited sight, and we want it to be able to work with some kind of screen reader or some kind of ARIA live region and read out what's on the blocks. That's kind of a long way out though, currently. So another use case is for power users who want to just be faster. And the third use case, which we haven't explored that much, but has potential, is for people who have motor impairments, so they can't use the mouse. There's ways to that you can have the cursor just move around the different blocks, and they could maybe use a pedal or something else to insert.